Good evening, everybody. My name is Jennifer Kanzenbach. I'm the city's communications manager, and we're going to be talking tonight about the West Side Connector. So before we get started, I wanted to make sure that everyone has signed in the back at the table so we can make sure we have your contact information. There's some question cards on the back table, so if you have questions or throughout the presentation, if you come up with questions, feel free to come get a card from us. There's a restroom in the back left corner. I think there's refreshments at the back table. I think that's everything. Yeah. I just totally drew a blank of what else I need to say. I know there's something else I want to tell you. Oh, after the presentation, the question cards will be brought up to Brent and Steve and Oscar if there's anything for him, and the questions will be answered. If we run out of time, we'll type those up and put them on our website and also email them out to you. And tonight we have Brent Cooper, our Community Development Director, with us. We have Steve Hartwig, our Public Works Director, and Oscar Ortiz, our Police Chief. So we're excited that you're all here, and hopefully you learn a lot tonight. Thank you. I'll turn you over to Brent.
All right. Okay, thank you, Jen. Also wanted to recognize Alana and Nicole, also checking everybody in. And really wanted to give a really big thank you to the Boys and Girls Club and Jaime here for allowing us to use this magnificent facility for our meeting today. So we have a round of applause for the Boys and Girls Club. Like I said, it's one of the best things in American Canyon. Also wanted to thank Napa TV, cable TV, for being here tonight. They're awesome. Really appreciate them being here as well. So perhaps we can give a thank you to them as well. We have a whole lot of cookies and water. We don't want to take them home. So please help yourself. If you had dinner, it's dessert. If you haven't had dinner, it's dinner. So hope you like that. But also wanted to just maybe go over a couple things with the questions. If you could write them up, and then we'll collect them and read them out and answer them. And then we'll also collect them and have them on our website as well, so that we have that as a record for questions that people are interested in. And we'll do our best to answer them tonight. If we can't, then we'll research them and we'll get back to you with the answers. So I guess we have our West Side Connector meeting here tonight. This is really intended to be a neighborhood meeting, obviously open to anybody who's interested in coming, but it's to talk about local transportation issues here on the west side. And so it's nice to see so many people. It's great to have you here, and looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Wanted to run through a presentation for you, and then we'll be open for questions. So just kind of as an outline, so you have an idea what we'll be talking about. We have development plans here on the west side that do influence road networks and transportation, and I've got some listed here. We'll also be talking about our city's general plan, and also coming up, we'll be beginning in the summer of this year on a new comprehensive general plan. And so I'll talk a bit about that and what that difference it makes for road decisions in this neighborhood of the city. And then we have, of course, our staff contact and resources, and then we'll have our question and answer period after that. So if we think about what's here today, just as sort of a starting point, obviously the rest of you are, I'm sure, very familiar with the area. We have Commerce Boulevard today. It ends in a cul-de-sac up here. Right now, next to Hess Winery here, and then there's a warehouse building over on this side, and then it's pretty much closed to the public, and then motor vehicle traffic is not permitted between south of here, but it's used for accessing the property in the former Eucalyptus Grove area. And this area along here, as you've all familiar with and seen, is a gravel road. So that's pretty much what we have here today. So there are a number of projects in this area, and so the next few slides will walk through what is planned and kind of in the sequence that we expect to see it happen. So kind of what we call phase one we have a development project, which is a new warehouse right over here. So just so you have an orientation of where that is, we're all probably familiar with the Wetlands Edge road, eucalyptus here, the parking lot for the trails. We have the 4-H club and Spirit Horse. And so just north of that, beyond a row of trees, is a new warehouse planned. And that will be going for a public hearing to our Planning Commission on Thursday next week. So assuming that project is approved and constructed, there is going to be a road needed to access the warehouse. And so this yellow line here is showing sort of a road segment called Commerce Court. And it will end in a cul-de-sac right here. So right now the road's blocked. At this point, it'll be extended south to a cul-de-sac. So at that point, that will be the extent of the Commerce Road, and that will be its terminus. There will be, and I guess that's pretty much what's planned for the phase one. So assuming it's approved next week, we'll expect to see construction happen this spring, might be 2019, perhaps finishing in 2020, but that's kind of the first change that's planned in this area. What we call phase two would be construction of a new elementary school over here at Wetlands Edge and Eucalyptus. And I know there's been various meetings about that, but that will be the second project that you can expect to see in the neighborhood. And I believe the school is independent from the city, so we get our information from the school district, but my understanding is their goal is to have the school ready for students in the fall of 2020. So in between here, this would be a new road segment that we would call Wetlands Edge Court, and it would end in a cul-de-sac. And so there would be no road in between here with allowing motor vehicle through traffic. So there's no connection. There is planned, though, we call a bicycle path through there, a class 1 off-street bike path. So while there won't be motor vehicle connections between the two cul-de-sacs, you'll be able to ride your bike through there or walk. So it's kind of nice to be able to, if you live down elsewhere in the city, you can ride your bike to work if you're working in the Green Island area. So the phase 3 would be construction of the Clark Ranch Park, and that would be on the west side of Wetlands Edge Court. And so that's planned some time out. There's some funding for the project, mainly down here next to the parking lot, but the main area up here this time really it doesn't have funding, and so the timing for construction of the park itself, what we kind of listed here is to be determined, but certainly not less than 3 to 5 years from now. And so those are the improvements that are proposed, for the foreseeable future. Wanted to talk about our current general plan. So the city has, as does every city in California, has a general plan for the long-term build-out of the city. And that talks about the physical construction of the city for our land use, areas that are vacant today. There is a plan for how it might be used in the future, and you can find that in the general plan. And so along with land uses, we have a mobility plan or a circulation element that goes with it to facilitate movement of people and cars and bikes and transit and so on. And so the general plan has a plan for extending a west side connector road in this area of the city. And so I knew I would do that. So kind of back to the pointer here. So the long-term plan would have Commerce extend south, and then it would hit kind of this corner here, and it would head east along the north side of what would become the school, and then hit Eucalyptus Drive on an angle over somewhere along here. Now, the general plan is intended to be a long-range document, and so there hasn't been any engineering of the alignment. It's a general alignment. It's not a precise alignment. It'd be subject to conditions that would exist at the time that the road would be needed. So, but this is the alignment that's shown in the general plan today. There's no funding to build this road. The roads that are planned to be constructed are the ones that we showed in yellow. There's no plan at this time to construct a west side connector to Eucalyptus. I also wanted to point out too that there was a very deliberate intent when the general plan was adopted. It was this particular portion of the general plan was adopted in 2013. There was a very specific intent that Wetlands Edge Court does not connect with Commerce Court or Commerce Drive here. The purpose here is to separate traffic that might come down this road specifically from directly connecting the Eucalyptus and Wetlands Edge intersection. So in this case, it would be an indirect connector from offset. So that's really what our general plan says today. So I'd mentioned at the beginning, we are planning to update our general plan beginning summer of this year. And so this would be perhaps a good time, especially since we look at the interest we have in circulation issues in this area of the city, certainly take a second look, as we would anyway, at the land uses and the transportation alternatives in the west side of the city with a connector through a variety of alternatives. And so at this point, we haven't begun exploring different alternatives. There's a lot always to think about when you're putting a road through a certain area. You know, what's in the path, what might it serve, who would be affected, how would you pay for it, how much would it cost, are there environmental features like wetlands in the way. There's a lot of things to think about when we're considering different road alternatives. And so that will become part of an updated general plan. An updated general plan typically takes about 2 years. So if we were to start in summer of 2019, probably have something developed over the course of a couple of years, so that when we're looking at summer of 2021, we'd have a plan. The plan, though, doesn't fund the road. Policies and things kind of kick into place. But this time, there's no funding for a road itself, and we'll be working with all of you and others on road networks here and elsewhere in the city as well, where we have some flexibility because roads haven't yet been built. So part of things that might be, questions you have in your mind is, okay, if you're going to be updating the general plan, how can I get involved? And whenever there is a general plan update, we'll have a citizens committee to help guide some direction on vetting ideas and coming up with consideration of alternatives. We'll be having workshops. There'll be a very robust program, and we'll be talking about that in the course of the next 6 months as we gear up to begin a comprehensive general plan update. But also in general, we have a variety of outreach methods. We have our city manager's update. If you haven't signed up for that, I'd recommend it. Anything that's important going on in the city manager makes a point of including in his update every week. And so the general plan, of course, is a big deal for any city, and it would be for this one as well. So that would also be well publicized. You can always call Mr. Hartwick or myself. We're happy to talk to anybody and answer questions and whenever needed. We do have a Citizens Academy, and I see we have some of our Academy graduates are here, but that's also another outlet. We typically have those about once a year or so, 25 people per class. So that's another way of being able to learn how City Hall works and how decision-making is made. And we also have our City Council meeting at the beginning of both the Planning Commission meeting and the City Council. There is a standing item on the agenda where anybody can talk about anything that's on their mind that's not on the agenda. And so that's another way of being able to provide some opportunity to be heard. While the City Council or the Planning Commission couldn't act on what you bring for an issue, it may be something that the City Council agendizes or the Planning Commission brings on its agenda at a later meeting. So it is a way of being able to highlight something that's important to you. We also have, I want to give a plug here to an upcoming event that will be held at our high school on February 20th in the evening. Stay tuned, we'll have more information on the details of that. But that's a free event for the public, and it'll be very informative. I hope you like it, but it is another way of being able to stay in tune with what's happening here in the city. And then we do send out notices. I don't know how much people pay attention to letters from the city or whether it goes in the recycle bin, but we do email, or rather mail notices for a variety of different things that are happening in your neighborhood. So if you get something from the city, it could be a notice of something that could be interesting to you. Here's some other online resources that are ways that you can stay in touch with what's going on here in the city. So that could be useful as well. And then here's our contact information for Mr. Hardwick and myself. And we're kind of at a point now where I'm glad to answer any questions you have. Which I just got some. Would you like to read them? I'm not sure they want to hear my voice anymore.
Sure. I'm not going to answer them, though.
You're right.
Okay. Okay.
Want me to hold them? All right, I'll hold them.
Okay, in what way will this affect the youth?
Well, that's a very broad question.
Clark Ranch.
The Clark Ranch?
So in the future, the third phase where he talked about the Clark Ranch development, that would probably be the most relative to youth in our community. The recreational opportunities and open space, and then, I forgot about the school, of course. Yeah, and then the new school site would also relate to the youth. There will be a lot of really great outdoor youth-related activities at Clark Ranch. And I don't think they'll care about the warehouse.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so what alternatives to Commerce, Eucalyptus, then Wetlands Edge, or Donaldson have been explored, like routing to Napa Junction or Lombard directly?
All right. At this point, we haven't begun the general plan update process, so we haven't really looked at any alternatives at this point. That would be something that we will do during the general plan update, and not only we'll be looking for the public as well to offer suggestions for alternatives, but we'll be doing all that through our general plan update process.
Oscar, there is a traffic speeding problem on there is a traffic speeding problem on Wetlands already. Please study this before making it worse with more traffic and eucalyptus.
Is that a question? That's a statement. It's more like a statement.
Okay.
Okay. Will there be encroachment on Maderos' lands?
So at this time, we aren't contemplating any roads on any specific property other than what we have in our general plan, but that would asterisk that in that we don't have funding to build it. So at this point, there's no specific property where we're planning to construct the west side connector road.
Are there plans to modify the Green Island Road to Highway 29 interchange? How will it connect to the proposed Newell Drive extension?
Okay. While there aren't specific plans, that will definitely be analyzed as we look at the general plan update that Brent was talking about and the circulation element. There's also an ongoing study to look at Highway 29 and traffic flow, partnering of the city and the Napa Valley Transportation Authority, and that work will be done kind of in conjunction and simultaneous to our general plan update. So we expect to use that study along with our general plan update and the efforts and research and options that we'll look at for that, so that there at least will be some things looked at for 29 and Green Island Road.
Why is the city not connecting Green Island to Napa Junction via Paoli Loop, Paoli Loop/Lombard? Why is the perceived cost more important than the neighborhoods, the children, or the wetlands?
All right, so this question would talk about another alternative road alignment, and it would be considered when we update our general plan, among other alternatives.
How are you still advocating for the original vision of American Canyon as a destination for recreation instead of development?
Well, I think perhaps this question might be talking about the different types of projects that are proposed here. American Canyon has a variety of different land uses throughout the city, and so there really isn't only one kind. Obviously, we do have the park here planned for the future with funding when it's available. We do have an industrial park here, and this is some part of an extension of uses of that sort in the city. One of the things that may not be obvious to a lot of people is that having a complete city with a variety of jobs provides places for people to work, helps generate economic activity, and all of that helps provide tax revenue, ultimately, that could be used to help fund park maintenance and restoration. So it's really kind of a complete picture. And so over time, we'll see all kinds of different land uses built in the city, but it's done in accordance with the general plan, which looks at different interests and needs of the city.
Why do you want this to be open commerce? Why do you want to push it through? Why do you want to open it? The west side connector.
Okay, I think the question is talking about why do we have a long-term plan for a west side connector? And so the reason for that is there are a variety of mobility needs in the city. There is an east side connector planned for Newell, and the west side connector in the 2013 circulation element was this road that we're showing here. And it's really meant to provide access for folks to be able to get in and through our city without having to go on Highway 29. So that's kind of the reason why it was decided that way in 2013. But once again, we'll be looking at all of this again when we update the general plan.
What is the impact of the new Devlin Road connection on the proposed connection from Green Island Road to Wetlands Edge Road? How will the increased traffic go through American Canyon streets?
Well, the Devlin Road connection is making that connection of Devlin Road all the way down to Green Island Road. That's a necessity for the circulation of the industrial traffic, the truck traffic that utilizes that area. A big part of our commerce is wine storage and wine warehouses. As you see, one of the projects is a wine storage warehouse. So Devlin Road is to connect with the airport area, to be able to get vehicles up to Highway 12 to then go on to I-80 and places elsewhere all the way across the country. And so the Devlin Road project itself is specifically to allow that interconnectivity of the industrial parks, both in the city and in the county around the airport. So that's what that project is for. It has no direct bearing and wasn't contemplated necessarily in conjunction with this. The Devlin Road connection is to complete Devlin Road. The city is working on our Devlin Road Segment H, which is in the city. The county is going out to bid, or is out to bid, for their Segment E, so that there's a continuous connection of Devlin Road through that airport and industrial Green Island Road area.
I think this is just how your general plan will impact Highway 29 traffic in the future. And I think it's, yeah.
Right. Well, Highway 29, I think you may or may not know, is a state facility. And yes, obviously, folks, all of us that are here use Highway 29 in the course perhaps on a daily basis, or certainly on a frequent basis. And new development certainly would add to traffic on Highway 29. The couple of things in response to that is the general plan calls for widening Highway 29 one lane each direction to add capacity. And then we have a traffic impact fee. So as new development is approved, they pay money that goes towards a special account to help pay for road construction in the city, including the city's fair share of improvements on Highway 29. Just sort of as statistics, the 75% or so of the traffic on Highway 29 is regional, in that the traffic that's there has no business in American Canyon. They're just driving through town. And so when we look at what's our fair share, it would be how much of the traffic on the highway is traffic that comes or goes to American Canyon itself. So the city does collect funds to help pay for our fair share, and it's something that Caltrans appreciates, and was the time that our general plan was updated with the circulation element, they sent a letter saying we laud American Canyon for doing this. So the city does step up and help pay for its fair share, but it is a state facility. It's a very expensive facility to improve, but it is something that we're doing to help our fair share towards it.
And just to add, as Brent has talked about, the monies that we're setting aside to help with future improvements that would help 29, the city has also, just for your information, invested in some things already on Highway 29 to help support Caltrans in increasing the efficiency of the corridor. Well, it sounded too loud before. So we just completed what was called the Signal Interconnect project, which is actually connecting the intersections in the city, within the city on Highway 29 with actual wires. That project has been completed, and Caltrans is right now sort of double checking to make sure all the connections are true and functional. And they're going to be doing some timing adjustments to the intersection based on that, using that Signal Interconnect system. There's also some future technology that we're looking at, working in partnership with Caltrans, and we'll have more information on that kind of once we move forward. But those are some items that have been discussed at council meetings, so that council and the public are aware of some of the improvements that the city is already investing in, sort of on Caltrans's behalf, to help support traffic that is related to American Canyon, and to help our citizens be able to get through the city a little easier on the highway as well, by trying to make these improvements using some of the technologies that are available.
How is the city addressing the danger of increased traffic on wetlands when it is already rare to see stops at stop signs and legal speed?
Traffic calming question.
Well, let me start. Some of the things that both Public Works and the police department work in conjunction is looking at ways to do traffic calming. So there's sort of a three-legged stool. There's engineering, or putting things in that hopefully adjust behavior so that traffic behavior is good. There's education, and making sure people are informed and aware speed limit signs, schools being in the neighborhood and providing that kind of educational information, and then enforcement, where the police department then enforces the laws and the regulations of the traffic and the vehicle code that are out there. So those are ways that we look at just in general to try and improve safety throughout transportation corridors.
So on the enforcement side, the traffic division appreciates all the feedback we get of complaints, or where people say, hey, this is a problem in this street or this intersection, or speeding or stop sign or red lights or whatever. And they log those, and then they plan their day around those complaints. So it was just to give you a quick example, you'll see in the next month on the annual report that the traffic enforcement unit has written a lot more tickets than they traditionally have. But you'll also see they wrote a lot less speeding tickets, and they're writing more stop sign tickets and cell phone tickets. And that's just based on complaints. So depending on what the complaints, they focus their enforcement on that. And we're in constant communication with our public works partners for the engineering part of it. We do get complaints, as mentioned in the question, about Wetlands Edge. The motorcycle cops will patrol that for speed enforcement. Either they don't hide good enough, or the perception of speed is maybe not what the radar gun is actually saying, because it's not a very productive use of their time. So they do it because it's in their rotation, because the complaints are in. They end up writing very few speeding tickets because the speeds aren't, it's not I-80 type of speeds. The street itself is too narrow for people to get too fast. That also means it appears very fast. But they do do some enforcement on that, and you'll see, again, a lot of stop sign tickets. But there are a lot of solutions on the engineering side for calming measures. So.
Okay, so we're also broadcasting on Facebook Live and YouTube Live, so I'm going to be monitoring the questions there as well. The next question is, how will the big trucks, semis, be prohibited from American Canyon streets?
Well, even in the current general plan, which does show the connector that Brent had talked about with the angle and coming down to Eucalyptus, the plan all along would be to prohibit trucks south of basically the top end of Clark Ranch and the school, and there would have been signage, and it would have been an enforcement measure, and we can't actually design the road in such a way that it makes it difficult, not impossible, but difficult for trucks. So combinations of engineering and enforcement would require that the trucks go north, use Green Island Road to get out to the main highway, and therefore would not be coming through on neighborhood streets. Trucks in general, because there are deliveries, there are other types of needs and reasons why trucks may be in neighborhoods, they're not specifically prohibited, but the large trucks that we're talking about that frequent the industrial park and do a lot of wine delivery, and that would not be allowed south of there. There are various sizes of trucks, and the larger ones would not be allowed to go south of that location. Even in the current general plan, that was the plan to prohibit them from going south in that area. The idea is to keep the industrial work going in the industrial area and getting it out to state routes to where they then transport the goods to distant locations.
Okay, how are you going to create a safe buffer between commercial activity and residential?
So I think the question is referring to separating the industrial uses to the north from the residential uses to the south. And at this point, I think we've achieved that with the current plans to cul-de-sac the roads at each end without allowing through traffic in the middle. And so I think that problem is resolved. Now, what we do in the future with road alignments and a connector, again, that'll be something that we'll be talking about thoroughly with the new general plan update.
This is actually two questions. So first, how will you prevent commuters and traffic from cutting through to Wetlands Edge and other residential streets?
Well, I think the answer is pretty much similar to the one I just had. We will be talking about this issue extensively in the general plan update. I think we all recognize that with new technologies, back in 2013, there was no such thing as Waze. that can kind of find your way anywhere through traffic congestion. So, that is, these newer kinds of opportunities, and which can lead to other problems in other ways, are things that we need to think about as we update our policies. So certainly the point is well taken, and we certainly expect that there'll be plenty of interest in this issue when we're looking at our general plan update.
The second part of that question was, how will this impact the wetlands and the preserved wildlife there?
I think I answered it.
Okay. New wine warehouse area, is that a commercial area? Are you planning to permit more warehouses in that area?
So the question about additional wine warehouses in that area, the zoning, which regulates land use throughout the city, including this area, allows for winery and wine-related uses. So, so all of this empty property here is zoned for that kind of use, and the process to allow it is what we call a conditional use permit. And this would be an approval that requires our planning commission to conduct a public hearing on the merits of the application. And so it's sort of, as I mentioned, this area right in here.
Okay, for the part of the road that vehicle access is prohibited and those who need the access, how is that going to work from Eucalyptus Drive to access prohibited area?
Yes. So I think the question has to do with, how do you get kind of fine-grained and provide access to individual parcels? That really is something that needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis, depending upon their need, where they need their access, and what kind of traffic it is. It's very specific and really is something that you have to look at on a case-by-case basis. But the overall goal right now is to as I'm showing here for general traffic, we have the two cul-de-sac configuration.
Okay, why is there a warehouse right next to Clark Ranch? Animals are there, outdoor area, and will there be emergency access at both new cul-de-sacs?
So this property here, like I say, we have different zoning districts in the city, and so this one, when it was annexed into the city, allowed for winery uses, and then there was a clarification to that about 2 years ago for winery uses in this area. So it's just an area that is private ownership. There are biological studies that are done at the time projects are proposed, and so the area here has been assessed for biological resources. The areas that are next to it themselves have their own biological resources for the park here. Fundamentally, the Clark Ranch Park is an active park, and so there will be some areas there where there may be some protection of some trees and things, but mostly this is a pretty active park.
American Canyon has a recreation destination of paintball jungle. Will access to this existing successful park be figured into this plan?
So we kind of get back into site-specific conditions. We need to look at how to accommodate access because the properties around the paintball jungle are changing. And so we are going to need to take some time to really focus on what is the access needs, the parking needs, and where does that fit into this picture. It hasn't been answered at this time, but it is an issue that does need to be resolved well before these road changes occur.
What will you do to help the countless wildlife species when constructing?
Whenever there is new construction, there's an environmental review that's done, and the environmental review identifies what special species might be in the area or are in the area, and they would call mitigation measures that address that. And so it could be that if there's a nesting season within trees, for example, then there may be limitations on grading activity and noise in the vicinity of that. But there are a variety of these measures that are put in place whenever there's new construction.
Okay. You say there's no plans or money for eucalyptus, but you're already buying land to put in a roundabout at Teresa and Eucalyptus. The corner house was purchased, correct?
The house was purchased. That was, I think, last month, and it wasn't necessarily a roundabout. The idea is that in the general plan, it currently shows the extension of Eucalyptus to Highway 29, lining up with at the intersection that's already signalized. That right now is just a T intersection. Brent can show you where that is. That comes out of the Walmart area between the Sonic and the B of A. The Eucalyptus is shown in the plan to extend and connect up. In order to make that alignment work, that corner property was going to be necessary in order to construct that extension to the highway.
Okay. Include tasting room close to New Napa Junction Elementary. Oh, will there be a tasting room at the winery or the warehouse close to the school?
There is no plan for a tasting room at the new building here. This is intended for wine storage, and there is no wine tasting proposed at that location.
Isn't there a restriction to not have alcohol too close to schools? So I don't know if that would apply for storage of wine too. Maybe the question.
Yeah. There's no alcohol consumption in the building. It's simply storage for wine.
Okay, under the new proposed school plan, how are parents going to drop off and pick up their children from school since Commerce Court is closed to through traffic? Got it.
Well, this question has to do with the planning for the new elementary school. There are meetings the school district is hosting on the school itself. But the plan, as I understand it, is this court here has there's driveways in and out of the parking lot to provide some circulation. But I'm not going to tell you I'm an expert on this. It's really a subject for the school district to explain, and they are having meetings to discuss the school.
Since the commercial zone will be a wine warehouse, working employees can park their cars at Wetlands Edge parking area, and then how will you prevent commercial traffic in the neighborhood?
So I think the question is talking about the parking lot here being used by employees of the new warehouse. The warehouse itself, per our zoning code, is required to provide parking for its employees, and so there's ample parking available on the site. So this would be a bit of a hike for somebody to do on a daily basis. They might want to go walk down there in the lunch hour, but I think there's plenty of parking that will be provided on the site itself. Are there any other further questions from the audience?
So just to let everybody know, this presentation and all of the slide materials, we didn't make copies tonight, but it will all be available on our website tomorrow. So if you want copies of any of this, you can just reach out to us. There will be contact information on the website page. And the school district, on our homepage or on their website, you can find the scheduled meetings for the school updates for both Napa Junction relocated school and the number 2 middle school. Okay, if the general plan is not changed and Green Island connects to Eucalyptus as currently planned, how can you keep traffic from turning left and using Wetlands Edge?
I think the question is if, let me look at that again.
Sorry about that.
If the general plan is not changed, well, I mean, that will be the whole point of going through the process of doing the circulation element and in general, the general plan as a whole, to look at options. If somehow, the community in general wants to have the general plan the way it is and council approves that, then it might stay that way. But it sounds like that there's just too many other ideas and options that are going to be explored as part of this. The general plan update is going to happen long before there's going to be any funding or any availability to connect up those roadways. And I think what it meant by connecting Green Island, meaning the west side connector. So the general plan update, the will of the community, the desire of council is going to happen long before there would ever be any kind of connecting up roadways being constructed in that area. The Devlin Road and the Green Island Road reconstruction are projects that are moving forward, but those are up in the Green Island area.
But if it is connected like this, how is it possible to keep anybody from turning left onto eucalyptus into another wetland?
So I think Mr. Kishinev has a valid question, and I think I would refer to Mr. Hartwig's answer if, at the end of the day, after looking at alternatives and a comprehensive general plan update, if the community lands on a design like this, then that is the one that the community wants, then that would be it. But I think in the theoretical, it's hard to know how one might end a process that hasn't yet begun. So I hope that all of you will be involved in our general plan update and come to our meetings. We'll have workshops and committees, and there'll be information and opportunities to reach out and be involved. So certainly encourage you to do that. Do we want to take a couple minutes to answer some questions from the audience?
To that point, the 2013 general plan, it did not come down on here. It was farther under that tank, and it came straight down more to the right. So this is actually, it appears to be different than what it originally was. But anyway, to my question, two-part question. First part is, why did we decide to put the warehouse at the bottom of that parcel? Why didn't we not leave more of a buffer and put it at the top? And then the impact of a warehouse to children and the school, I think, is a big concern for a lot of us. So I'm not seeing a lot of explanation or, some sort of committee or something that kind of discussed that interaction. So if you could explain that. Thanks.
All right. So the property that's here is privately owned and has zoning for warehouses. And so it would be up to the property owner to decide where on their property they would like to build a warehouse. So a decision to put the warehouse at the southern end really is a private decision of the property owner. There has been consideration of impacts to the adjacent future park and future school. The loading bays are on the north side and not on the south side of the building. So the truck activity is going to be here on the north side and heading up the cul-de-sac. There is also quite a deep landscape buffer along here with a couple of rows of trees in addition to the trees that are already there. And so the building itself is meeting the zoning setbacks, and they've moved their activity to the north where most of the active use of the building will occur.
Who's paying for the construction of Commerce Court or the extension of it?
So the construction of Commerce Court is needed to serve the building, and that would be funded by the developer. Okay, maybe I'll kind of work my way down the room.
I didn't hear you answer if there's going to be an emergency access between the two cul-de-sacs.
All right. There we go. Thank you for the reminder. There is going to be availability of fire personnel or police to be able to connect between the two cul-de-sacs. We'll ensure that there is either an access road or the bicycle trail itself will be wide enough to accommodate vehicles.
So as you discussed this plan, the school is going to be constructed. Wine warehouse permission, city will give because it's a commercial zone and the future plan of that park. So according to you, this plan is almost a final plan. So what is your next process since you collected all the questions, comments and the feedback? So what is your next plan after this meeting and the feedback from the public?
So the question was, what were we doing, with the feedback from the meeting? Certainly, it's a really good heads up for issues that we'll be wanting to talk about with the upcoming general plan. Also, too, we hope that this meeting is informative and you've learned something tonight that you weren't aware of when you came here tonight.
And then I just want to point out that part of this meeting was to give you the information that with the wine warehouse going to the Planning Commission next week is very likely that in the early spring there could be activity happening out there. And the point was to also let you know that that road is not going to connect through directly to wetlands and to the intersection at Eucalyptus and Wetlands Edge. That's not something that's going to happen. The one that Brent has shown in dash lines is very unlikely. I know you've asked it again, what happens if, but that's going to be going through a whole process that involves everyone who is interested in participating in that discussion. So that's probably not very likely based on what we know and what you know. So those are the reasons for the meeting tonight, was give you what's going to be happening out there so that you are aware as you start seeing equipment grading the ground for the warehouse. They start building some roadway from the existing southerly end of Commerce where it ends now to extend that down, that's not to put it all the way through to Eucalyptus Wetlands Edge intersection. So that's one of the things that we wanted to clarify, that has been a rumor. That's not a plan that's going to happen.
So the next question, which I actually want to add to that part of this meeting also was, in addition to informing you about it's not punching through right now, was to encourage you to participate in the upcoming process of the general plan update, which is kind of related to this question. It's asking, in the next meeting, will there be more advance notice? And yes, there will be, and there will be many meetings on this topic in the future. So this isn't a done deal. It's not going to go get constructed tomorrow and,
Yeah, this is the very beginning, if you will, of a very long process. And Brent has said 2 years. It's at least 2 years typically to get through a general plan update process.
So the Wetland Edge Court, is that plan designed already for how they're going to block it off? Or is the school district talking about that? When can we look at those plans?
I'll go ahead, and answer that. As far as looking at the plans, the school district, I believe, is finalizing those. They have some meetings planned to talk about this school and also the new middle school over by the high school. So we would defer to them as far as the plans, but they have the basic design laid out. Yeah, it comes up and shows a cul-de-sac bulb at the top of their property. So that's how it's shown right now. And for the specifics of the plans, you could contact the school.
Hi, on the winery warehouse that I guess it's going to start getting constructed, is it going to ever include a wine tasting room? And if not, is there any provisions to prevent it to make one in light of the elementary school there?
Thank you, Jen. The zoning for the area says that if there is proposed wine tasting, it would need to have a conditional use permit. And so that would be a separate approval that would be considered by the Planning Commission through a public hearing and notice and so on. But we mentioned at this time, there is no wine tasting proposed with the current conditional use permit. Here's been.
For future meetings, can we have childcare so that more families can attend and the kids don't have to tell me they're hungry 10,000 times? Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, we can definitely work with our Parks and Recreation Department to try to make those arrangements, but there's plenty of cookies back there. Who else?
On behalf of the children in American Canyon, I wanted to know if, I know that, I'm pretty sure at least, that Napa Junction is going to be torn down because it's built on a fault line, but is the middle school, because I know they're building a new one, but is the current middle school going to be torn down as well, or is it going to stay standing?
It's going to stay standing, correct, Mike? Yes. Anybody else?
You said that the warehouse is going to go to the Planning Commission next week. So is there a way that as public we can petition that from moving forward, and what's the process for that?
There'll be a public hearing next Thursday night at the City Hall, at the Council Chambers at 6:30 p.m., and the Planning Commission will be conducting a public hearing. And so anyone from the public that's interested in coming, either hearing about it or having something to say, will be allowed to speak at the meeting. The Planning Commission ultimately, though, makes a decision on the application.
I don't mean to take over your meeting, but hey, we got time. Have they remediated the Hazmat Site that's located under the school? The proposed school site?
Well, that would be a question for the school district. The school district is separate from the city, and they have their own authority to build schools, and they're responsible for whatever conditions they might encounter for the site. So unfortunately, we cannot answer that question.
Their meetings are coming.
And they have meetings coming. Okay, well, I'm not seeing a lot of hands. I want to invite you to have some water and cookies. I really appreciate you being here. I really am glad that you've taken the time to come, and hope that you found this tonight worthwhile and you learned something, and hope to see you again sometime soon.